Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Jeremy Goodwin. Communities along the Mississippi River are getting used to record flood levels lately. As the water creeps higher, residents and business owners are filling sandbags and holding their breath. Joining me now in studio to discuss the impact on the region, just what's going on with all this flooding, is science reporter Eli Chen. Eli, thanks so much for coming in today.
Hey, Jeremy.
Yeah. Well, you've reported that we're expecting some of the rivers in the area to crest today, but that's a term that comes up every couple of weeks. So what does that mean?
Actually, so it's going to crest tomorrow, according to the National Weather Service predictions. I just checked their hydrograph a few minutes ago. Right now, we're at 45.5 feet, and the National Weather Service expects the river to crest at about 45.9 feet tomorrow evening. So by crest, for those who aren't environmental journalists like me or meteorologists, crest just refers to the highest level that the flood waters will rise to before we expect it to recede. So,
but does that happen cyclically? Like, will it crest again, or is this a one-time?
So that's entirely possible that we could get a higher crest. It's just uncertain because it's hard for the National Weather Service and meteorologists to make those projections that far out.
Okay, well, a lot of us think of a flood as a singular event that happens.
Right.
when we hear about things like 80 plus days of being at flood levels, does that mean there's water going through the streets for 80 days? What does that mean?
So what that means is that we've been above flood stage. So flood stage in St. Louis is 30 feet, and we've been above that since March, and it's been what that means is that more areas are being flooded that wouldn't normally be flooded.
Okay, so that's not necessarily homes and businesses, but area that it might be roadways.
Yeah, and so the thing about this flood is that it's gone on for a long time, and it's reminding a lot of people about the '93 flood, which went on for about 104 days in the St. Louis area. And at a recent press conference that the Corps of Engineers had a few days ago, they said that we're expecting to beat that record.
Oh my! So it's historically speaking, the duration we know we're looking at some.
Yeah, we're just a few feet short of the height that was reached with the '93 flood. Okay. That was 49.6 feet.
What factors lead to a more intense flood season in a given year?
Well, it could be, it's mostly dependent on, rainfall. And, we had a lot of really heavy snow melt earlier this year. And that contributed to flooding not only here in St. Louis, but, up and down the Mississippi River watershed. About a month ago, I came onto the show to talk about the fellowship that I did in late April. And, we went down to places in Arkansas and Mississippi where I saw lots of homes that were, flooded along highways, and we took a canoe trip out to the Mississippi River near Helena, Arkansas, and we had to go through a flooded forest in order to get out there. So,
flooded forest. That sounds daunting to me.
Yeah, our river guides really weren't sure what they were doing, and there was a lot of ducking under trees before we actually got out to the Mississippi River.
So people are dealing with this up and down the Mississippi, really?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Well, we've had reporters out in the communities covering this in recent weeks, and let's go. We have some tape from some folks who've talked to some people who are out there dealing with that. Let's hear some remarks from Andrea McManus. She lives in Grafton. Her home was flooded. She hasn't been able to access it since May 9th. Let's hear Andrea.
We've taken everything out because things were just floating around in the river, but it stinks. It's gross. I've been looking for apartments and homes, Alton, like Edwardsville, because when and if someone goes back, I don't know when it'll be, at least till the end of the summer. And I don't understand why Illinois hasn't declared a state of emergency. None of these counties can get any of the money back that they put out, or that the people can't get the help, the businesses can't get the help, and then what? Then they have to flee to other cities, and then the city fails.
Eli, do you happen to know offhand, is that a live issue in terms of declaring the state of emergency or not in Missouri and Illinois? Is that something people are watching and waiting for?
I'm not too clear on what's happening in Illinois, to be honest. But I will know that Andrea's situation is it's pretty sad, and I don't think this was quite mentioned in the tape. But Andrea has 3 children that she's also looking after. So, and they only moved into that apartment last November. That was tape that was gathered by our other reporter, Corinne Ruff. That was used in a feature that we produced for today, and it's. This flood is really affecting, residents upstream, and Andrea's apartment is right near the confluence of the Mississippi River and the Illinois River, which the Corps of Engineers, at least in the St. Louis district, they're really paying attention to because those are the areas that are hardest hit right now.
The kind of impact of the flood we're looking at right now, are these areas that are prone to being flooded?
Oh, yeah. And there's, I listened to a lot of the tape that Corinne had gathered from this interview with Andrea. And, there's a sense that if you live along the river, you kind of get used to these floods. But, we beat the second highest flood on record, which was, originally set in like 1973. And it's, this is an unusual time.
Well, Eli, from a sustainability point of view, do we have a habit of rebuilding in areas that we know are going to suffer flood damage in the future?
I think that a lot of environmentalists will say that, there are not smart decisions being made about developing in floodplains at the moment. And there were a lot of lessons learned, especially after the Great Flood of '93. The Federal Emergency Management Agency bought, I think, about more than 4,000 homes after that flood. And, that land can't be redeveloped. But what happens in between all those areas, I think there's a lot of targeted economic development happening in those areas. And, there are environmental groups that say that shouldn't happen.
Sure. And business, we heard from a homeowner who can't get into her, or a renter who can't get into her home. Businesses are paying the price as well, not only from direct flood damage, but sometimes from just the impression that a place is dangerous or you should stay away from it.
Yeah, and so the thing is that this is every time a major flood comes through the area, it sparks conversation about whether or not we're managing the rivers correctly. And there are a few notable geologists in the region, like Bob Criss, who will say time and time again that the Mississippi and the Missouri rivers have been altered so much that it's not flowing the way it naturally would, because it's being constricted by levees and dams and floodplain development. It's been dredged for navigation, and it's the thing is that really has an impact on the river.
Let's hear from one of those business owners who's out there. This is Rick Ellis. He owns an antique store called the Brass Horse. That's in downtown Alton, Illinois. Let's hear about his experience.
There has been a lot of water, a lot of evacuations, a lot of businesses shutting down. It's really affected this area quite a bit. I would say my sales have been down 90%. Even though chances are this location will never be flooded, people still think most of Alton is flooded and they're not coming over. We have a lot of local that come in and shop, but most of ours is tourist. And considering that the tourist areas around now are shut down because of the flooding, there's just not that many people out.
Eli, is the region better prepared now to face all this than it was in 1993?
Well, the Corps of Engineers said earlier this week that, the levees are in better shape than they were in '93. There's been, more than $100 million worth of improvements that have been done to urban levees in the region. So I believe that one of the chief engineers, Dave Bussey, who was around in '93 as well, he said that at a recent press conference that he'd be worried if we had the levees that we had in '93. So in their view, we are better prepared now.
Meaning if the levees hadn't been improved since then.
With pump stations, et cetera,
okay.
like that, we're in a better shape than we were then.
But we still have a long flood season to go this year, right?
Possibly. I mean, like I said, it's hard to project that far out. It really depends on how much rainfall we get and where it happens.
Very good. I want to thank science reporter Eli Chen. That was very informative. Thanks so much for coming in today.
Yeah, thank you.
This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, saluting Earth Day on April 22nd with an ongoing commitment to help offset carbon emissions with sustainable harvesting of Missouri forests. Details at choosewood.com. The Gateway brings you the day's news from the St. Louis region and across Missouri. It also includes stories from the Illinois side of the river and our Metro East reporter, Will Bauer.
In Alton, in Belleville, in East St. Louis, in Edwardsville, in Cahokia Heights, at Scott Air Force Base, I'm Will Bauer, St. Louis Public Radio.
Listen to reports from Will and all of our journalists weekdays on The Gateway, on the STLPR app, and wherever you get podcasts.